Have you ever felt the pain of injustice? How did you find the strength to overcome it? In the sterile hum of the classroom, the afternoon sun sliced through narrow blinds, casting sharp lines of light and shadow across worn desks and peeling paint. The chatter died abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence tightened by the importance of the moment. Amara stood frozen, a bundle of bruised hopes held tightly in her trembling hand. Her journal, the one sanctuary where her voice blossomed. Then, cruel and swift, fingers tore into the pages, snaps of paper, shreds fluttering like wounded wings across the linoleum floor. The tearing echoed in Amara's chest, sharper than any harsh word. The laughter that followed was cold, biting, a pack of wolves howling at a solitary flame. Jessica, slick with arrogance and the poison of privilege, smirked as she tossed torn pages like confetti, uncaring of the dreams they carried. Thought you could hide behind your little stories, huh? The words were a spit of disdain that cracked the fragile calm that Amara struggled to hold. Faces turned. Eyes, some curious, some complicit, watched the wreckage of her spirit unravel before them. The once vibrant walls of her safe space felt suddenly like tombstones, freezing the air in betrayal and isolation. The shadows leaned close, swallowing the color from her clothes, leaving her a silhouette of broken resilience. Amara's glasses slid down her nose, and with a furtive swipe of her sleeve, she fought the quickly gathering tears. The room smelled of stale pages and crushed leather. The late spring sunlight hinted at freedom outside, now suffocated by enclosed walls and suffocating judgment. Why don't you just leave? Jessica taunted, eyes gleaming with merciless triumph. The scolding hush of the teacher was a distant blur, drowned beneath the pounding of Amara's frightened heart. Her voice was a mere whisper, a whisper that trembled yet carried an unspoken strength. I'm not leaving. The torn pages lay scattered, a visual symphony of her silenced words, her stifled creativity, a map of stolen potential etched in ragged white and black ink. The broken necklace, a precious gift from her mother now absent at her throat, resonated with more than just memory, a symbol of innocence fractured but not lost. Amara's knees buckled slightly as she picked herself up, shards of humiliation piercing her like shards of glass. But in the depths of that shattered moment, a flicker of something deeper, smoldering and bright, kindled beneath the hurt. The murmurs turned to low whispers. The stares morphed into a tableau of misunderstanding and apathy that clothed the room in oppressive heat. Yet, through it all, Amara stood raw and illuminated by the stripe of sunlight that fell precisely upon her face, a single beam promising the possibility of unseen strength. Her breath came slow and deliberate, the echoes of torn pages now a heartbeat of defiance in the silence. A small, defiant glint gleamed in her eyes as the camera lingered on the fractured yet unbowed figure of a girl who refused to be diminished. The world beyond the classroom walls awaited, uncertain, daunting, but hers to challenge. And though the journal lay in pieces, the story it cradled was far from finished. The last light faded slowly as Amara's shadow stretched long and sure across the floor, past between silence and the rising storm of a voice that had yet to fully rise. The hallway outside the classroom was cloaked in a dim silence, punctuated only by distant echoes of laughter and harsh words still lingering like smoke in the air. Amara's steps were unsteady as she pushed through the heavy door, the chaotic roar of the school fading behind her like a receding storm. The torn fragments of her journal weighed heavily in her crumpled testament to her shattered voice and stolen dreams. Beyond the glass walls, the late afternoon sun filtered weakly through a haze of smog and cold air, splintering into fractured shards of light on the cracked pavement. Her glasses caught the faint glint, a small flicker of illumination in an otherwise darkened landscape. Amara's breath came in shallow rasps, her heartbeat a drumming pulse against the silence that now clasped tightly around her. Her fingers curled involuntarily, recalling the stabbing sensation of the pages slipping through mocking fingers, the sharp laughter, the scorn reflected in hostile eyes. It was as if the walls themselves conspired to swallow her whole, erasing the vibrant hues she'd once painted on her life's canvas. In the solitude of the worn school hallway, the buzz of whispered accusations seemed to reverberate from every peeling paint chip, every scratched locker door. Each step echoed a reminder not just of what was lost, but of the weight of being unseen, unheard. Her gaze fluttered to the necklace tangled beneath her layered shirts, the gift from her mother, now a fragile symbol of innocence fractured by cruelty. Its cold surface echoed the ache within her chest, a hollow memory of things once precious, now broken yet lingering. Beneath the heavy sky, Amara paused, her back pressed against the cold brick wall. The fragments of despair pressed in the urge to surrender, to fold into the shadows and disappear untold. A taut, aching silence wrapped around her, thick and suffocating. Yet somewhere beneath the layers of shame and fear, a dull but persistent ember began to glow, a faint pulse beneath the rubble. She closed her eyes, the weight of stolen dreams pressing her gaze inward, searching for a root of something unyielding within. A whispered breath escaped her lips, fragile but fierce. "I'm not finished." The muted bustle of the school continued beyond the window, distant and indifferent, a world that spun uncaring beneath the gathering twilight. But within Amara, the faintest glimmer of resistance had sparked, a fragile light amid shadows. Her fingers grazed the hidden space where the journal once rested before, now just a collection of torn pages on the cold floor of the classroom, and in that touch, a sliver of resolve rippled through her. Silence cocooned her as the sun dipped further, warm tones bleeding into the muted blues of dusk. The cracked pavement outside glistened with the first hint of rain, droplets trembling on the edge of release, mirroring the tension coiling within her heart. The camera lingered on her profile, framed by the interplay of shadow and fading light, young, broken, yet poised on the invisible cusp of a quiet, burning revolution. And as the storm finally broke with soft, steady raindrops against the windowpane, Amara's eyes opened, a reflection of resilience silently igniting beneath the veil of sorrow. The air inside the cramped apartment was thick with dust motes suspended in the beams of weak afternoon light filtering through threadbare curtains. Amara's steps echoed softly across the faded linoleum floor, a subtle rhythm against the oppressive silence that hung like a heavy cloud. She knelt beside the rickety bookshelf, her fingers grazing layers of forgotten memoirs, a subtle trembling betraying the storm churning beneath her calm exterior. Her eyes caught something partially hidden behind a tattered stack of worn papers, a battered cardboard box sealed with yellowed tape and covered in a fine coat of dust. With a breath that caught somewhere deep in her chest, Amara lifted the lid, a faint creak breaking the silence as secrets long buried stirred awake. Inside lay stacks of crumbling manuscripts, pages filled with handwritten Werther brothers' stories and musings, fragments of a voice she had barely known but now felt intimately connected to. The shards of his world offered not just stories but lifelines, flecks of hope glimmering through the darkness that had shadowed her. Amara's fingers traced the edges of a folded letter atop the pile, brittle as old parchment yet heavy with unspoken truths. The scent of aged paper mingled with the faintest trace of her brother's ink and the distant warmth of family, a fragile tether pulling her back from the brink of despair. The broken necklace rested at the bottom of the box, its delicate chain knotted but enduring. It was a symbol of fragmented innocence, dreams interrupted, and yet it shimmered faintly in the feeble light, a soft pulse of resilience amidst the ruins. A fissure of determination cracked the veneer of her shame, a spark flickering to life in the marrow of her soul. The whispered words of her brother seemed to echo across time, as if urging her to reclaim her voice and rewrite her story from the scattered fragments. The room's muted colors subtly intensified the dull grays, taking on warmth. Shadows softened and retreated as if responding to the surge of resolve budding within her. Amara's breath steadied, her chest filling with the hard-won clarity of purpose born in the crucible of hurt. She unfolded a page, fingers brushing over the inked lines with reverence and new resolve. The journal was no longer just a collection of torn memories, it was a call to arms. With every word, she felt the invisible chains weaken, the walls of silence begin to crumble. Outside, the distant murmur of life beyond her window swelled into a vibrant pulse, a heartbeat matching the rising tempo inside her. A single sunbeam pierced through the cloudy haze, casting a golden shaft across the scattered manuscripts, a spotlight illuminating the path from despair toward hope. Amara rose slowly, the manuscripts clutched protectively to her chest. Her gaze lifted with fire and quiet defiance, the edges of her lips curling in a tentative yet unmistakable smile. She was no longer merely the girl crushed beneath the weight of cruelty. She was a storyteller, a keeper of legacies, a voice rising anew. The camera lingered on her silhouette framed against the shimmer of that light, the living essence of resilience and rebirth, poised on the threshold of a journey far from over. And as the curtain of light deepened, Amara's figure moved with purpose through the room, a beacon catching flame, illuminating the darkness one word at a time. The storm that had been looming all morning finally broke in a relentless downpour, the rain pounding against cracked sidewalks and slick asphalt streets, cascading off rusty metal fire escapes and drowning out the city's usual cacophony. Beneath the damp overhang of a battered bus stop, Amara crouched low, her hands clenching the vestiges of her shattered journal. Its torn pages, hastily taped together, whispered the story of her ruined sanctuary as if the paper strained against the scars imprinted on every fiber of her being. Her braided hair, heavy with rain, clung to the contours of her determined face, framing eyes that burned with a cautious spark, timid yet unextinguished beneath the storm's fury. The wood grain of a nearby bench, rough and soaked, mirrored the texture of her truth, raw, gritty, and resilient. A bus hissed to a stop and emptied around her, but Amara remained adrift in a solitary bubble, heart pounding not with despair but the faint pulse of a budding defiance. Her breath came ragged in the rain-chilled air, the sharp cold biting at her skin, alive with the tension of unvoiced truths clamoring within. "Don't let them win," a soft voice echoed. A classmate stepped from the shadows, hesitant yet steadfast. Amara's head lifted, surprise flickering before the faintest smile cracked her guarded expression. "We can write again," the classmate whispered, offering a worn notebook, its pages pristine and awaiting stories untold. Her fingers trembled, brushing the offer with both skepticism and fragile hope. "You really mean that?" "Yes," the voice replied, eyes steady and unyielding in the half-light. "Your words belong to the world, not to their cruelty." The rain soaked through layers of clothing, yet the warmth gathering between them was a quiet rebellion against the storm. Amara's breath steadied as the first seeds of trust took root. The dense urban landscape seemed momentarily less hostile, painted anew with vulnerable colors of alliance and new beginnings. A distant siren wailed, weaving through the water-drenched streets, a haunting soundtrack to the fragile rebirth. Above, the clouds gazed down, heavy with the promise of yet more thunder, yet beneath their weight, the flicker of hope persisted tenacious as ever. Amara pulled her jacket tighter, clutching the notebook as if it were a talisman. The jagged rhythm of her heartbeat echoed the staccato of raindrops against the pavement, both relentless forces challenging the darkness that sought to smother. "Maybe this time," she breathed, voice barely a whisper, still thickened by doubt and burgeoning resoluteness. Her eyes lifted to the storm-laden sky, searching for a crack in the cloud-sainy sliver through which light might pour. The camera held on Amara's face, rain tracing slow rivulets down her cheeks, mingling with the unspoken questions and fragile hope that shimmered within her gaze. And as the city around her continued its frenetic dance beneath the relentless rain, Amara's silhouette stood tall, not yet victorious, but unbroken, a solitary figure poised at the cusp of a fight for voice, identity, and redemption. The screen faded to the muted sound of rainfall, leaving the question lingering: how far will she rise from the ruins of her shattered story? The humid air clung to Amara like a second skin as she stepped cautiously through the narrow hallways of her high school, the flickering fluorescent lights casting sharp shadows on graffiti-stained walls. The small group of friends she had gathered huddled close, their whispered encouragements barely audible beneath the clamoring noise of a school still steeped in judgment and division. Each step she took carried the weight of fragile victories, yet the omnipresent threat of collapse shadowed her every move. Jessica's glare sliced through the crowded hall like a blade, her posture radiating a predatory confidence bolstered by unspoken alliances. Alongside her cadre of bullies, she prowled the ashen corridors, their laughter dripping with cruelty, eyes sharp for any sign of weakness. Amara felt the icy tendrils of their gaze trail her, a silent warning that the battle was far from over. In the relative safety of the art room, Amara sat at a scarred wooden table, the rough grain pressing against her palms as she opened the battered journal with trembling fingers. The pages she repaired so painstakingly bore witness to her resilience, yet the scars of past torment lingered, scrawled annotations, crossouts, and lingering stains, tokens of battles fought in silence. A close friend, Malik, approached with cautious steps, his eyes betraying a flicker of uncertainty that chilled her more than any taunt. "Amara, you okay?" His voice was low, but there was a hardness beneath the concern, a fissure of doubt beginning to creep into their alliance. She forced a faint smile, masking the turmoil within. "I'm holding on." Yet the strain was undeniable. Rumors flared like wildfire, whispers accusing Malik of capitulation, of betrayal. The walls closed in as alliances fractured, trust became a currency more precious and precarious than ever. One afternoon, as rain hammered the windows, Amara stood alone in the empty library, the patter of droplets a steady heartbeat against the shadowed stacks. She traced the delicate necklace at her neck, the broken charm cold and heavy, embodied innocence shattered but not forgotten. The very ground beneath her trembled with tension when a message arrived, an unseen act of betrayal from someone she once trusted. The subtle shift fractured their fragile coalition, leaving Amara more isolated than ever. Her voice, strained yet resolute, barely whispered to the empty room, "Why does pain follow me like a shadow?" Her journey teetered between despair and determination as days blurred into nights filled with anxious waiting. Yet amidst the creeping darkness, small sparks of courage flickered, the pulse of rebellion, quiet but insistent. In one daring moment, Amara stood before the school council, speaking with a trembling strength only born of suffering and hope combined. Her words cut through the stifling silence, stirring uneasy surprise and cautious empathy. The camera captured the flickering candle at the podium, its flame battling against the lingering shadows, an emblem of her fight to reclaim her narrative. But just as a fragile light seemed to breach the gloom, a whispered threat came, a trap set in shadows, a cruel game designed to snuff out her uprising and rewrite her future in despair. The final image held on Amara's steadfast gaze, eyes aflame with defiant fire as rain pattered against the windows, the wordless promise of a fight far from over. The storm outside mirrored the gathering tempest within and beyond, a cinematic crescendo hinting at battles yet to come. And as the screen faded to black, the chilling question lingered: who could she truly trust, and how much could one girl withstand before the silence swallowed her voice forever? The late afternoon sun slanted sharply through the cracked blinds of Amara's cramped bedroom, throwing long, stark lines across the frayed edges of a battered notebook. Her breathing was shallow, eyes fixed on the scattered pages, now stitched together by trembling hands, the ink smeared and words barely legible. Each page was heavy with the cost of courage, the torn fragments of trust, the whispered betrayals that haunted the margins of her life. The air around her shimmered, thick with the residue of fear and defiance, as the memories pressed in, the venomous laughter of Jessica and her pack, the quiet gasps of the classroom, the invisible claws of societal chains tightening with every glance. Yet, beneath the crushing weight, a restless ember flickered, fragile but persistent. Her fingers traced the remnants of her brother's worn handwriting, words of struggle and survival etched in desperate clarity. It was in these faded lines that Amara's fractured world began to reveal a deeper truth, a revelation that pierced the veil of her pain and shattered the illusions she had clung to. The sound of a creaking floorboard shattered her reverie. A figure emerged from the shadows, her closest trusted friend, their eyes clouded with remorse and fear. The words that followed fell like stones, heavy and cold. "Amara, they know. They know everything." Her heart stuttered, a tempest of betrayal crashing against her fragile resolve. Who? Her voice was a brittle whisper, trembling with the dread of impending loss. The response was a fractured silence, the unspoken truth more devastating than any accusation. The trust she thought was unbreakable had cracked, splintering under the relentless pressure of fear and division. That night, the walls of her sanctuary seemed to close in, shadows coiling tighter as the storm outside intensified, rain hammering with relentless fury against the windowpane. The broken necklace, once a cherished emblem of Inocencio, stood cold and heavy on her dresser, its fractured chain emblematic of her ravaged world. Amara's gaze lifted to the ceiling, where the flickering candlelight struggled against the darkness, casting long, wavering shadows, a dance of light and despair intertwined. Her voice, barely audible, broke the silence with a question laden with raw, aching clarity. How do I fight when everything I love is used against me? In the suffocating stillness, a single page from her brother's manuscripts trembled on the desk, as if breathing its own silent plea for survival. There, hidden within the words, was a hidden narrative, a truth about their shared past tangled with hope and hard-earned wisdom. Tears blurred Amara's vision as the dawn crept slowly over the horizon, casting tentative light over a soul at the edge of breaking yet unwilling to surrender. The camera held tight on her face, etched with pain yet flickering with the undeniable glow of awakening strength. And as the city outside stirred to life, Amara's silhouette framed against the swelling light, the journey ahead unfolded, a path woven with peril, revelation, and the fierce promise of reclaiming her story. The world around Amara had dimmed into a suffocating silence as she sat alone on the cold concrete steps behind the school, the evening skies smudged into heavy gray, a chorus of raindrops beginning to fall with a foreboding rhythm. Her fingers absently traced the broken chain of her necklace, numb and fragile against the harsh bite of the chill air. The bruises on her arms throbbed faintly beneath her sleeves, silent testament to the viciousness that had seeped deeper than flesh. The shattered remnants of her brother's only remaining connection, a battered journal that had survived the tempest but not unscathed, lay discarded beside her. Its pages, smeared with rain and fingerprints, told stories that now felt painfully distant, fragments of a past that seemed to slip further from grasp with each cruel step she took. Her heart pressed heavily against her ribs, each beat a hollow echo in the cavernous dark of despair. The sharp winter wind cut through the spaces between the towering apartment blocks, carrying echoes of mocking laughter and whispered threats that had haunted her steps long before this moment. Memory flickered violently, the sharp, cruel tug of Jessica's smirk as knives of prejudice folded into every word, the cold indifference of a world that turned its eyes away from the suffering hidden in plain sight. Amara's breath shuddered, drawn out and fragmented, like whispers lost in the storm's fury. Her glasses fogged, droplets blurring into a watery veil obscuring the world she no longer believed could be illuminated. A single torn page fluttered in the wind, lifted from the wreckage of her journal, a silent ghost drifting in the murmur of the cold night. It danced eerily before settling on the wet pavement, the ink smudged but stubbornly legible, words that once carried hope now seared with the sting of lost dreams. Her voice, barely a rasp, fell into the void. What remains when the light fades? No answer came but the relentless patter of rain, a fierce percussion mirroring the storm erupting within. The street lamps flickered, their feeble glow swallowed by the encroaching shadows, plunging her into a darkness as boundless as her doubt. Her body curled inward, a protective shell against the eroding tides of trust and love, each tear that slipped free a river carving paths of raw vulnerability. The broken chain of her necklace pressed cold against her skin, a constant reminder of stolen innocence and fractured bonds, a symbol not just of a past lost but of a future cast into uncertainty. In that suffocating stillness, Amara was alone with the echo of shattered hopes and the thinning pulse of a fight yet unclaimed. And as the storm swallowed the city in its relentless depths, so too did the light within her flicker, trembling on the precipice of darkness and oblivion. The night had fallen long and merciless by the time Amara found herself alone beneath the skeletal frame of an empty playground. The chill air gnawed relentlessly at her skin, seeping through the thin layers of her jacket and sinking deep into the marrow of her bones. Above, the sky was a canvas of ink, the scattered glow of distant city lights flickering like fragile candles caught in an unforgiving wind. The tangible silence around her became a haunting oppress, or the absence of sound echoing more loudly than any shouted insult. Her breath formed pale clouds that dissipated quickly, mirroring the fragility of her spirit as it struggled for purchase against the dark tide rising within. Amara's gaze fixed on the broken swing that hung listlessly on rusted chains, its empty seat swinging ever so slightly, moved only by the cold whisper of the night. Each creak and groan of metal was a mournful echo of the dreams torn from her grasp, the words in her journal ripped to shreds, and the trust in others shattered by betrayal. The broken necklace still weighed heavy on her heart, a silent hymn to innocence lost and the fractured path before her. Her hands trembled as she reached into her pocket and pulled out a torn, rain-stained pageant echo of the stories she had once poured forth unfettered. The ink shimmered faintly under the weak glow of a distant street lamp, like stars fading into the abyss. She folded it carefully, as though trying to press its scattered meanings back together, but the cracks ran too deep. The world seemed to contract, the walls of isolation closing in relentlessly as Amara's hopes dissolved into a choking fog of despair. The street was deserted, except for the chill wind that swept across her, carrying the hollow echoes of laughter and scorn, remnants of battles fought and lost. She sank to the cold ground, the unforgiving concrete pressing into her knees, grounding her in a cruel reality devoid of solace. Her eyes, once keen and vibrant beneath her glasses, now glazed and distant, stared unseeing into the heart of the darkness, where light had all but been extinguished. A voice, barely a murmur against the vast emptiness, slipped from her cracked lips. "Is there a way back from this?" No answer came, only the relentless pulse of the night and the faint rustle of leaves trembling in the breeze. The fractured necklace slid from her fingers, clinking softly as it hit the ground, a sound swallowed immediately by the vast stillness. It lay there, a delicate symbol of all that was broken, yet quietly enduring. Her breath slowed until it ceased to shape the night, and her body folded inward, a fragile cocoon of shattered dreams and fading hope. The camera lingered on the stillness that embraced her, the silence pregnant with the weight of defeat, a haunting pause before the coming dawn, a soul poised at the precipice of surrender. And as the shadows deepened and the city lights blinked out one by one, Amara was left alone with the night, a solitary figure swallowed gradually into the dark. The dawn crept hesitantly over the horizon, casting hesitant rays through the grimy window of Amara's room, a stark contrast to the oppressive shadows that had consumed her the night before. The soft light pooled uneasily over the torn remnants of her battered journal, the pages ragged and ink-smeared, but still stubbornly entire enough to whisper the stories they held. The broken necklace, once a symbol of innocence lost, lay quietly on the worn wooden desk, its fractured links catching the fledgling sunlight as if to ripple with a muted hope. Amara sat slumped in a threadbare chair, the weight of isolation and betrayal pressing heavily on her slender frame. Her glasses glinted faintly in the dawn, fogging slightly with every shallow breath, as if her thoughts struggled to find clarity beneath the fog of despair. Her eyes, dim with grief yet flickering with latent defiance, lingered on the scattered manuscripts unearthed from her brother's hidden collection. They were a lifeline cast through the turbulent night, fragile yet beckoning. The room was silent but for the distant rumble of the awakening city, the clatter of footsteps on the cracked pavement, the muffled honk of a lingering taxi, the soft murmur of mourning voices that felt miles away from her lonely refuge. These sounds tethered her painfully to a world that seemed to move on without her. Amara's trembling hand reached out, fingers brushing gently over a spotlighted page, the familiar flowing script stirring faint echoes of a past filled with courage and resolve. It spoke of fights waged in quiet corners, of storms weathered beneath heavy skies, and of a voice that refused to be silenced. The ink seemed to pulse beneath her touch, a silent heartbeat urging awakening. A single syllable escaped her lips, barely more than a whisper, a fragile gesture born of all the nights spent battling shadowed fears. Rise. The flickering candle beside her sputtered in a draft that carried the scent of faint rain, a promise of cleansing and renewal. Amara's gaze lifted, drawn to the dancing flame that seemed to fight its own battle against encroaching darkness. In that fragile flame, she glimpsed a mirror of herself, flickering yet unyielding, wounded yet unwilling to die. Her breath steadied, the tight grip of despair loosening ever so slightly, replaced by a tentative seed of hope. The shards of her broken necklace caught the sunlight, casting tiny prisms across the room, fractured light spreading like quiet fire upon cold stone. The broken dream no longer lay buried beneath despair but shimmered in fractured beauty, a mosaic of strength to be pieced together anew. Silence enveloped the room once more, deep and almost sacred, as Amara stood slowly, a silhouette poised between the remnants of sorrow and the fragile dawn of rebirth. And as the city beyond began to hum with the first breath of morning, Amara stepped toward the window, the promise of a new day unfolding with every fragile step, a journey from silence toward voice, from despair toward defiance, from shattered past to reclaimed future. The dawn finally kissed the city skyline with a faint, golden glow, spilling soft warmth over the battered schoolyard where Amara stood amidst the remnants of her shattered journal. The violent storm that had raged through her mind the night before seemed to fade into a gentle hum, replaced by an almost imperceptible whisper of hope. Her hoodie, a vibrant patchwork of colors, was damp from the rain, each droplet glistening like tiny sparks of resilience. Her braided hair clung to her face, streaked with dirt and tears, a testament to the battles fought and the pain endured. Beneath her feet, the cracked pavement reflected a fractured world, yet amid the chaos, a small, flickering flame of determination burned quietly. She knelt slowly, focusing her trembling hands on the battered pages of her journal, now a collection of torn-out memories, ink smudged and pages crumpled. The torn pages symbolized her lost voice, yet also her unyielding spirit, refusing to be silenced. Amara's breath caught as she reached into her backpack, her fingers closing around the familiar shape of an object she'd nearly forgotten. Rough-textured, worn, but filled with significance, the small, hidden notebook she'd kept of her brother's stories. Her eyes stared into the distance, where the morning light was starting to mend the dark clouds, promising harmony after chaos. With tentative resolve, she opened the battered book, its pages fragile as hope itself. Her fingertips brushed over familiar words, and the scent of ink and old paper filled her senses. The story's small, powerful snippets of her brother's life reminded her of the fight he had endured, of dreams unbroken by societal scorn. His voice echoed softly in her mind, "Find your strength, Amara. Write the stories they don't want told." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves at her feet, carrying a faint melody, the distant sound of her own heartbeat, steady and determined. The muted colors of her hoodie and jeans seemed to shimmer subtly as her shoulders straightened, renewed by a rush of newfound purpose, fragile but fierce. Her eyes, filled with both pain and hope, lingered on the horizon where the sun's first rays peeked through the clouds. The promise of dawn, delicate yet radiant, beckoned her onward. She pressed her palms softly against the pages, feeling the unspoken strength in every worn line, every faded word, every stolen piece of her voice now reclaimed. The camera lingered on her silhouette, a tentative figure rising from the wreckage, poised at the threshold of change. The dawn's gentle light bathed her in a golden glow, a silent declaration that the journey, though far from over, had begun. The storm had not defeated her. It had forged in her the quiet resilience to carry forward, step by step, into the uncertain yet hopeful horizon. The first rays of dawn gently seeped through the cracked windows of the community center where Amara stood, her silhouette barely visible against the expanding light. Her face, still etched with the shadows of yesterday's doubts, softened as she looked at the battered journal she clutched closely, a symbol of her journey from silence to voice. Her fingertips traced the worn edges, the inked words faint but powerful beneath her touch, stirring a quiet conviction that had not existed before. The room around her was muted, shadows retreating in the presence of a slow, yet unwavering resolve. The walls, once gaunt and oppressive, seemed to breathe with her unspoken determination. Her chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, each breath a deliberate act of reclaiming her strength. Memories flickered her tears on the page, Jessica's cruel smirk, her own retreat into invisibility, each a fragment weighing heavily at her feet. But amidst these fragments, a new certainty emerged, glowing softly in the depths of her eyes. The battered journal was no longer an eroded vessel of her potential but a battlefield where she would fight for her story to be heard. A gentle breeze caressed the room as if whispering secrets of hope, rustling the pages of her preserved scriptures. She lifted her hand, then hesitated. Slowly, she opened the journal to a blank page, the surface still holding the ghost of her brother's words. Her gaze lingered there, a mirror reflecting her internal awakening and unspoken vow to write her future anew. Her voice, faint yet firm, broke the silence its time. The sunlight, now spilling fully into the room, cast a golden glow on her face. Her body straightened, her shoulders shed the weight of doubt, rising into a posture filled with purpose. The contrast, the dark shadows receding, symbolized her transformation from despair to agency, from silence to voice. She picked up a worn pen, its tip trembling, but her grip was steady now. The ink met paper, forming new words born from pain, resilience, and hope. Each stroke was a silent protest against the darkness that had threatened to drown her, a testament to her refusal to be silenced. Outside, the city awoke in a chorus of new beginnings. The streets brimmed with life, filled with stories unwritten but echoing in every step taken by those willing to speak their truth. The camera panned upward, capturing her silhouette against the rising Suna, symbol of dawn's promise. In that moment, standing at the crossroads of past and future, Amara saw her reflection in the glass, a determined girl transforming into a fierce young woman. The battered journal was no longer just a collection of torn pages but a container of hope to be filled with her story, her voice, her power. And as she continued to write, her silhouette softened by the radiant light, the shadows of yesterday faded into the distance, replaced by the luminous horizon of possibility. The scene lingered on her quiet, resolute face, a silent testament to the awakening of purpose, an acknowledgement that even amidst the darkest storms, hope can emerge in the most fragile yet unstoppable form. The town square was bathed in a luminous golden hue, dawn breaking through the haze of last night's storm. The crowd gathered, a sea of familiar faces and wary hearts, all drawn by the undeniable weight of change. Amidst the murmurs, Amara stood at the center, her figure silhouetted against the rising Suna, beacon of resilience reborn. Her colorful urban attire shimmered with the early light, symbolizing her vibrant spirit that refused to be subdued. Her eyes, once dulled with doubt, now gleamed with unwavering conviction. In her hand, she held a small, battered notebook, its pages filled with poems and stories of her fight, her voice laced with purpose. The torn pages from her past, once symbols of erosion, now became the foundation of her strength. Her breath was steady, each inhale infused with the promise of new beginnings. The distant hum of the city's awakening was like a heartbeat syncing with her own, a rhythm of hope, justice, and unbreakable spirit. Her mouth parted in a gentle smile, a silent vow to rally her community and ignite the collective voice that had been silenced for too long. "This is where our story begins anew," she whispered, her words carried on the breath of the morning breeze. Her gaze swept over the assembled crowd, now more attentive and unguarded than ever before. The oppressive pall of racial injustice and bullying had begun to lift, replaced by a collective resolve. She stepped forward, the ground beneath her firm and sure. Her voice rose, clear and potent, breaking through the layers of skepticism and fear. "We are more than their prejudice. Our voices matter, our stories matter. No longer will we be silenced by silence. No longer will they tear us down." The crowd responded with a collective breath, a gust of wind stirring flags and banners that bore symbols of hope, colors vivid and radiant, reclaiming the narrative. The sunlight burst fully through the clouds, pouring over the gathering like a blessing, illuminating the moment of transformation. Amara lifted her notebook high, the pages fluttering like wings of a phoenix rising. Her eyes locked with hers, a reflection of every struggle, every scar, and every victory, an unspoken promise that justice begins within and flourishes outward. The scene lingered on her Phasean image of pure, unshakable purpose before the camera moved upward to capture the transforming skyline. The oppressive shadows of yesterday receded, swallowed by the dawn of unity and hope. The city breathed anew, alive with the unyielding power of voices united. As the camera rose higher, framing her against the vast expanse of the awakening metropolis, Amara's silhouette became an emblem of unwavering strength, a radiant symbol of her journey from despair to redemption, from silence to voice, from brokenness to a collective dawn. The early morning light streamed softly through the grand windows of the Civic Hall, casting warm amber hues across the gathered crowd. Façons marked by suspicion and prejudice now held an air of quiet reflection. Amara stood at the center, her posture unassuming yet firm, draped in a simple but elegant dress that caught the light, symbolizing her journey from silence to strength. Her glasses glinted faintly, a reminder of her depth, the depths that had been ignored but now finally recognized. In her hands, she cradled the freshly published Buka, symbol of her voice reclaimed, a testament to resilience. Its cover bore her brother's handwriting, the first words she had ever found that ignited her purpose. The pages had once been torn, scattered like her hopes, but now they were bound in hope, in a story rewritten. The murmurs of the crowd quieted, giving space for her story to settle into the sacred silence of healing. Her eyes, bright with emotion, looked out over the faces, some filled with curiosity, others with awe, but all touched by the quiet power of transformation. She realized in that moment how far she had come from the girl once silenced and broken. A gentle breath touched her lips, though her voice was silent in words. Her presence spoke volumes, an emblem of what happens when injustice is met with unwavering inner strength. The candles on the dais flickered, mirroring her thousand unspoken words now finally given voice. The scene lingered on her serene face, her head slightly bowed in humility but her eyes lifting to the horizon, accepting the past, embracing the present, and opening her heart to the future. The camera slowly pulled back, revealing a panoramic view of the gathering, a community healing, a collective awakening. The distant hum of the city blended into a symphony of hope, underscoring the profound truth that change begins within, like a ripple spreading outward, subtle but unstoppable. As the visual faded into a tender embrace of dawn, Amara's silent smile lingered, a quiet victory, a symbol of peace reborn from the ashes of struggle. The story's first chapter of peace closed softly, inviting viewers into the deeper journey of healing, understanding, and hope. Under the tranquil glow of the setting sun, the park was alive with a gentle peace that seemed to hold the breath of a city finding its voice. Amara, now calm and poised beyond her years, moved with a grace that embodied resilience. Her hands cradled the freshly printed Buka, symbol of her rebirth and the voice she had fought so hard to reclaim. It bore her name and her story, a testament to battles won and innocence preserved amid chaos. The wind caressed her braided hair, which shimmered in the golden light, each strand a thread woven through her journey from silence to power. She paused, her gaze lifted to the horizon, where the first stars flickered softly against the encroaching dusk. Her eyes, once clouded with doubt, now shone with a clarity that reflected hope's renewal. Around her, children played and elders shared stories, their voices blending into a chorus of shared humanity, each one a reminder of the collective fight for justice and understanding. The torn pages of her past had been mended, stitched together with tears and resolve, forming a mosaic far stronger than any single fragment. Amara's fingers brushed lightly over her book's cover, feeling the smoothness a stark contrast to the rough texture of her early pain. She drew a breath, deep and grounding, a silent prayer of gratitude for her growth, her forgiveness, her healing. Her heart was open, a vessel of compassion and fierce determination. Turning softly, she approached a small gathering of supporters, friends, mentors, and even former enemies who had shared her journey of awakening. With a gentle smile, she reached out, her hand bridging the past and present, the pain and hope. "We keep writing our stories," she whispered, voice resonant yet tender, "even when the world tries to erase us. Our stories matter, our voices matter." Her words echoed softly, carried by the breeze, a declaration of ongoing resilience. The camera pulled upward, capturing her silhouette against the sprawling sky, an enduring symbol of strength and renewal. Her figure remained still for a moment, embodying both the serenity of the present and the unyielding promise of tomorrow. In that quiet dawn of reconciliation, with the earth warm beneath her feet and the sky ablaze with the fading light, Amara's journey reached a peaceful peak, a testament to the power of truth, forgiveness, and hope that can bloom even in the harshest conditions. Under a sky painted with the gentle shimmer of dawn, Amara stood atop the city's highest overlook, her silhouette softly illuminated by the subdued light, surrounded by a quiet dawn that promised renewal. The horizon stretched endlessly, a canvas of soft pinks and blues merging into a new day, symbolic of her journey's culmination. Her hand rested gently on the now revealed cover of her published book, a testament to her endurance and voice reclaimed. The battered journal, once torn apart by betrayal and fear, lay forgotten in the shadows, its pages stilled but its legacy imprinted in her soul forever. Her gaze was calm, yet fierce, an unspoken acknowledgement of every tear shed, every lie faced, and every battle fought. The city below stirred in hushed anticipation, awakening to the ripple of change she had helped ignite. The wind carried a faint whisper, a lullaby of hope and resilience, as though the very earth celebrated her victory, an unbreakable testament to the power of inner strength and collective voice. She inhaled deeply, feeling the coolness of the morning air fill her lungs with promise. Her face, luminous with peace, reflected an acceptance that glowing soft in her eyes, an understanding that the journey to justice was ongoing but that her part had been written into its unfolding story. Her fingers traced the edges of her book, a symbol of her story's new chapter, no longer muted by silence, no longer fragmented by fear. A gentle ripple of warmth spread from her core, a silent radiance that transcended words, a testament to her growth, a symbol of her embrace of her true self. The camera panned outward, capturing her solitary figure against the vast horizon, her silhouette a beacon of hope for a community still awakening to its own strength. And in that quiet moment, the story found its poetic ending: peace in resilience, strength in unity, and the everlasting power of a voice finally heard. What story would you write to change your world?